In the vast windswept steppes of 13th century Mongolia, the largest land empire in history was starting to crack. Its great unifier, Genghis Khan, was gone, and his descendants were locked in a bitter civil war for power. It was a world of brutal politics and constant fighting, a world utterly dominated by men. And yet in this arena of ambitious, Khoisan-hardened warriors, one person emerged who would defy every rule and shatter every expectation. This person wasn't a king or a son destined for a throne. She was a princess, the great-great-granddaughter of Genghis Khan himself. And according to those who saw her in action, she was more dangerous than all of her 14 brothers combined. This is the story of Kutulun, the wrestling princess who never lost and who built a fortune on the shattered pride of men. Imagine a princess whose dowry wasn't measured in gold or jewels, but in horses, 10,000 of them to be exact. Each one was a trophy, a testament to her absolute physical dominance. Any man who wanted to marry her first had to beat her in a wrestling match. If he lost, he had to give her 100 of his best horses. If he won, he'd claim the hand of the most powerful woman in Central Asia. But here's the kicker. No one ever won. Kutulun, whose name means moonlight, was born around 1260 into a world of chaos. Her father was Kaidu Khan, a grandson of one of Genghis' sons and a cousin to the famous Kublai Khan. While Kublai Khan was embracing Chinese culture and ruling his Yuan dynasty from Alavish Palace, Kaidu was a die-hard traditionalist. He believed in the old Mongol ways, a nomadic life of hardship, horses, and constant battle. He saw the settled, luxurious lifestyle of Kublai's court as a betrayal, a weakening of the Mongol spirit that had conquered the world. This wasn't just a family disagreement, it was a civil war that would last for 30 years. The world Kutulun was born into, the only daughter among 15 children. In a society that valued sons as warriors, you'd think the lone daughter would be kept safe, groomed for a strategic marriage. But Kaidu wasn't a conventional father, and Kutulun wasn't going to have a conventional life. She was raised not as a princess, but as a warrior, getting the exact same grueling training as her 14 brothers. From childhood, her days were spent on horseback, mastering archery, until she could hit a target at a full gallop. She learned to track, hunt, and fight. She could sharpen swords, milk yaks, and even knew the traditional Mongol rituals like drinking blood. The brutal steppe was her playground, and the veterans of her father's army were her teachers. While Mongol society was patriarchal, it was also pragmatic. The nomadic lifestyle demanded capable, resilient women who could manage Thetrib's wealth, run the household, and defend the camp. For Kutulun, this wasn't just a duty, it was a calling. She was incredible at every martial art, but it was in the wrestling ring where she found her true gift, and Mongolian wrestling wasn't a sport with lots of rules. It was a brutal, no-holds-barred fight for dominance, where kicks, punches, and other strikes were all fair game. Growing up with 14 brothers probably gave her a lot of practice. She wasn't just good, she was a natural, tall and powerfully built. The traveller Marco Polo described her as so well-made, she could almost be mistaken for a giant Tess. She developed a raw, unstoppable power that left her brothers and every other young man bruised and humbled. She was a force of nature, the living embodiment of the fierce spirit her father was fighting to preserve. As Kutulun grew up, the question of marriage became a big political issue. As the daughter of the powerful Kau Khan, her hand in marriage could unite clans and secure power, Suitors from all over the Mongol territory started showing up, ready for an alliance, but Kutulun had zero intention of being a political pawn. She had fought and bled alongside men, proving she was their equal, if not better. She refused to be given away like property. So she made an announcement that was as bold as it was unheard of. She would marry, but on her own terms. Any man, no matter his status, could win a hand, but only if he could beat her in a wrestling match. It was a direct challenge to her society's patriarchal norms, a powerful statement of her own independence, and she added a clever, costly twist. If the suitor lost, he had to forfeit 100 horses to her. The challenge was simply irresistible. Princes and warriors, their pride on they line, lined up for a shot. They were drawn by her beauty, her royal blood, and her father's power. How hard could it be to defeat a woman in a wrestling match? Turns out it was impossible. One by one they stepped up, and one by one they were slammed into the dirt. Kutulun wasn't just strong. She was a master of leverage and balance. She met every opponent with a chilling calm, her movements both fluid and explosive. The steps, as one writer put it, became littered with the debris of shattered male egos, and with every defeated suitor, her personal wealth grew. Herd of horses swelled into the thousands. Marco Polo, who travelled through Asia, reported that she had gathered a staggering 10,000 horses, a fortune that would make any can jealous. This wasn't just a herd of animals. It was a symbol of her power, a monument to her undefeated record. Each horse represented a man who had underestimated her. She had turned the one thing meant to control her, marriage, into her greatest source of power. The most famous of these matches was against a suitor who was incredibly wealthy, handsome, and confident. He was so sure he'd win that he wagered not 100, but 1,000 horses. Kutulun's parents were impressed and were getting anxious to see their daughter finally marry. They pulled her aside and pleaded with her, "Just let him win." They begged her to throw the match so she could have a good husband. Kutulun listened to her parents, then walked into the ring, faced the prince, and in the words of Marco Polo, threw him right valiantly on the palace pavement. The 1,000 horses were hers. The message was unmistakable. Her will was iron. She wouldn't pretend to be weak for anyone. Kutulun's skills weren't just for show. She was a warrior above all else, a key commander in her father's long and bitter war against Kublai Khan. Kaidu didn't see his daughter as a novelty. He saw her as his most trusted advisor. Out of all his 15 children, it was Kutulun he turned to for military and political advice. Her strategic mind was as sharp as her physical strength on the battlefield. She was terrifying. She would lead cavalry charges straight into the enemy's heart. Marco Polo wrote about her signature battle tactic with pure awe. He described how she would often ride out from her father's side, charge into the enemy ranks, and, as deftly as a hawk pounces on a bird, snatch a warrior right out of his saddle and drag him back to her father's army as a captive. This was an incredible display of skill and bravery, a psychological weapon that crushed enemy morale and inspired hero troops. Her soldiers adored her. Seeing their princess fight with such fearless grit filled them with the confidence to win. She wasn't just fighting for her father. She was fighting to preserve a way of life. Together, she and Kaidu held their own against the massive armies of Kublai Khan's Yuan dynasty. Her contributions were so vital that she's credited with personally saving her father from being captured in a major battle. She wasn't just a soldier, she was a military mastermind behind every campaign. But their incredibly close bond didn't go unnoticed. In a world of dirty politics, any perceived weakness is a target. Vicious rumors began to spread, likely from Kaidu's rivals, suggesting their relationship between father and daughter was incestuous and that this was the real reason she wouldn't marry. These were almost certainly baseless smears. A desperate attempt to stain Kaidu's honor by attacking his most fearsome warrior. To protect her father's reputation and silence the gossip, Kutulun finally decided to marry. Sources disagree on who her husband was. Some say she chose a man from a loyal clan. Another more romantic story says she married a captured enemy soldier named Abdukul, sent to assassinate her father. When he was caught and sentenced to die, his mother begged to take his place. Moved by this, Abdukul refused and chose an honorable death. Kaidu was so impressed by his courage that he pardoned him, and Kutulun, perhaps seeing a kindred spirit, chose rebels. In 1301, after decades of war, Kaidu Khan died. On his deathbed, he attempted one last revolutionary act. He tried to name Kutulun as his successor to lead the Kannada. He believed she was the most capable of all his children, the one best suited to lead their people, but for the patriarchal Mongol society, this was a step too far. Her brothers and other male relatives immediately contested it. A woman, Khan was unthinkable. Though denied the throne, Kutulun's power couldn't be ignored. She brokered a deal, throwing her support behind her brother Horus, but only if she remained general of the army. For a while, she held her position, a formidable power behind the new Khan. She fiercely guarded her father's tomb, protecting him in death with the same loyalty she had shown him in life. But without Kaidu, old rivalries reignited. Kutulun's influence was a threat to her ambitious brothers. Years after her father's death in 1306, Kutulun died at the age of 46. The circumstances are mysterious, and some sources suggest she may have been assassinated by her jealous relatives. She died as she lived, a warrior to every end. But her story didn't die with her. It was recorded by chroniclers like Marco Polo and the Persian historian Rashid Alain. Her legend lived on as a powerful symbol of strength and defiance. In Mongolia, her memory is still honored. Some believe the traditional open-chested jacket worn by Mongolian wrestlers today, the Zodog, is a tribute to her, a way for every male wrestler to prove they aren't a woman out of respect for the one woman no man could ever beat. Her story also traveled west, where it got twisted. She became the inspiration for the character Turandot, most famously in Puccini's opera. But in these Western versions, her strength is watered down. The fierce warrior who beat men with power slams was turned into a cold princess who challenges suitors with riddles, a woman who is finally tamed by love. But the real Kutulun wasn't a fairy tale princess. She was a general, a strategist, and an undefeated champion who commanded armies and built her own fortune. She looked at the rules of her world and simply refused to accept them. In the shadow of Genghis Khan's legacy among 14 warrior brothers, it was the lone princess who shone the brightest, a legend lit by the moonlight of the steppe, whose story continues to inspire.